Have you ever manifested something? The thing arrived. You did it. Your prayers were answered. And instead of being able to enjoy it, you're somewhere in your head, bracing for what's next, worrying that it might disappear, waiting for the rug to get pulled out from under your feet. Or how about this one? You're talking to a friend, someone who's never really been into spirituality or personal development, and they tell you they found this great book on manifestation, and now they're going to manifest their dream life. And 2 weeks in, they've got a shiny new car sitting in the driveway and a month-long vacation booked to the Italian countryside. And you're sitting there looking around at everyone else, all the influencers talking about how they manifested this freedom lifestyle, posting pictures of them and their laptops sitting on a beach in the Bahamas, talking about how they make $100K a month working 2 hours a week. And you, being someone who's done real work on yourself, someone who lives their life with sincerity and integrity, you're sitting there watching that happen, and somewhere underneath it all, you're asking yourself, what am I missing? Am I doing something wrong? Well, I'm here to tell you there's nothing wrong with you and that you're not behind. But there is something very important happening here that nobody is naming clearly. And if you find yourself here, chances are you already suspect this. That the way manifestation has been packaged and sold in popular culture doesn't quite match what you've actually lived. Now here's the distinction. There are actually two completely different things happening when people talk about manifestation. They get grouped under the same word as if they're the same process, but they're not. The first operates from desire, and it relies on a strong emotional charge to pull the desire towards you. You identify what you want, you build emotional intensity around the target, and you pull toward it. And because everything in our universe is energy, if you build enough energy around it, you can actually manage to get the result. So visualization, scripting, vision boards, affirmation, everything that's typically associated with manifestation, all of that falls under this category. It's an attraction model. Strong want, faster result. But it can work. The second is different in a way that's hard to describe on the surface, but it's obvious once you've lived it. Instead of pulling things towards you, it works by changing what you're actually reflecting. Life is just a mirror. So instead of trying to change the mirror, you change what the mirror is reflecting. You change yourself. So you're not reaching for something. You're becoming the version of yourself whose life already looks like what you want. And because that's structural, because it means going all the way down to the root, it sticks around. And that's the important distinction. The first model works quickly, but it collapses just as fast. The second takes longer, but it's longer lasting. The first is manifestation that satisfies. The second is manifestation that stays. The first asks, how do I get what I want? The second asks, who would I actually have to be for this to be my natural reality? Those are two fundamentally different questions, and the path to embodying them looks nothing alike. Here's what the popular version of manifestation doesn't tend to advertise. When something arrives into your life, it doesn't arrive in isolation. It arrives in the lap of the person you already are. And if the structure underneath hasn't changed, if there's still self-doubt running, still a nervous system that believes that you don't deserve it, still unresolved patterns around worth or loss, those don't just disappear because the manifestation worked. They come along with you into the new thing. So someone manifests a relationship. The desire was strong, the emotional charge was there, it worked. Mr. and Mrs. Perfect walked into the bar on Saturday night. The relationship arrived. But the energy they were actually manifesting from was lack, loneliness, the fear of growing old and ending up all alone. They're still the same person with the same attachment patterns, the same fear of abandonment, the same way of shutting down under conflict. None of that dissolved because the manifestation succeeded. Instead, it surfaces through the relationship. And 6 months later, the thing they attracted becomes the thing that mirrors back exactly what they were trying to run away from. Because you can be certain that if you're still operating from an inner state of lack, it's only a matter of time before life inevitably mirrors that back. Or maybe it's money. A small fortune drops in out of nowhere. Real manifestation that should set you up for stability in the future. Instead, gone within a year. It has nothing to do with a lack of responsibility or bad accounting. It's because the nervous system never recalibrated to the identity of somebody who holds that abundance. The body had one answer for what they were worth. You don't deserve that. You're the one who has to struggle for every inch, don't you remember? And the moment the number in the bank account says something different, the nervous system corrects for the discrepancy. And the unconscious pattern wins every time. And that's the part they don't post. You'll see the testimonials. You'll see the screenshots of their Stripe account, the celebration, the thing that worked. But what you don't see is all the things that didn't work. What you don't see is 18 months later, whether it held, whether the relationship lasted, whether the same feeling that was there before the manifestation is still there, just wearing different clothes now. The boom and bust cycle is real. It just doesn't film well. And if you've experienced that cycle, attracted something and then watched it erode, you probably blamed yourself, thought you did something wrong. But you didn't. You're using a tool that has real limits. And nobody told you what those limits were. Now here's what I'm getting at. If your path has looked like years of struggle, truly, honestly trying to make things work, deep emotional experiences that you couldn't explain to the people around you, a sense that something was being restructured from the inside out, and you haven't yet seen that reflected in your external life. You're not slower. You're not behind. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just doing it different. You're changing the person standing in front of the mirror. That's fundamentally different from trying to change what the mirror shows. The desire-based model works at the level of reflection. It tries to produce a different image. It draws a smile on the face in the mirror without actually becoming happy. What you've been doing, even if nobody has ever named it this way for you, is uprooting and rebuilding the very structure from which your entire reality gets generated. From the outside, it looks like someone who isn't manifesting. Someone stuck. Someone who's done a lot of work and has nothing to show for it. From the inside, it feels like a years-long process of becoming someone that you couldn't have predicted. Losing things you thought defined you. Slowly arriving somewhere that your nervous system actually trusts. And here's what shifts when you get there. You stop trying to attract things. Not because you've given up, but because the constant act of trying to get something was always a signal that something underneath it needed attention. When that level is actually clear, things don't need to be pulled. There's just nothing in the way anymore. Now I want to be fair here, because I understand why desire-based manifestation is everywhere. It can do what it advertises to do. It promises results without requiring you to look at anything uncomfortable. You stay focused outward on what you want, not inward on what's actually in the way. And it sells well, because the gap between where people are and where they want to be is a real thing. And anything that promises to close that gap fast is going to find an audience. But here's what I think is worth naming, because it's only becoming more prominent and it's causing sincere, well-meaning people to be misled. The influencers building careers around this model, they're showing you the peak, the bank screenshot, the announcement, the arrival. What they're not showing you is what happens after that, whether it held, whether the money is still there, or whether it cycled out quietly in ways that are harder to document. Where the freedom lifestyle actually changed how they feel on the inside when they put down the camera, or whether they feel just as empty as they did before. And the more self-aware you are, the more you already sense this in people's videos when you watch them. You can feel the disconnect between what they're advertising and what they're embodying. You're not seeing the screenshot with wholehearted, genuine belief. Part of you is already asking, but did it stay? Did it actually deliver the thing that you wanted it to deliver? You're not being cynical with this. You're being discerning. And that's your perception working correctly. Now, I want to tell you a personal story. It's not a dramatic one, and that's kind of the point. Just recently, I was looking for a new apartment. In the past, it would have been the whole ordeal. Spreadsheets, tracking every vacancy in a 20-mile radius, comparing every amenity, weeks of agonizing, analyzing, second-guessing myself, figuring out if I missed anything. This time, I found one. It's the only one I looked at. And instead of running through the usual mental checklist, something else happened when I walked in. My body just relaxed. That was a signal. No pros and cons, just a recognition. This is home. They were running a promotion. 8 weeks free if you applied that day. So I applied. And then the application delays, paperwork issues, processing problems, the kind of friction that used to mean something's going wrong. The one where I would have said, is this the universe's sign that this is not meant to be? But that didn't happen this time. Not because I suppressed it or slapped positive affirmations on top of negative thoughts. There just wasn't any story running beneath that says, this always happens to me, or why can't I catch a break? There was just patience, a quiet trust that the timing would work out better than I could engineer it. I ended up back in the leasing office a couple weeks later, still working through the delays, and the leasing agent says, you're in luck. Our manager just extended the deal today to 10 weeks free. If my application had gone through cleanly and immediately the way I was hoping, I would have gotten 8 weeks instead of 10. The delays I didn't stress about were the reason that I ended up getting more. And here's the important part. I didn't plan it. I didn't sit down in front of my vision board and surround myself with crystals and consciously try to manifest free rent. It just happened. Because I wasn't in the way of it. Because something structural had already shifted. And life was just catching up. And when it came, it felt natural. It felt good. Like I could just receive it with gratitude. That's what this kind of change actually looks like. That's the payoff that doesn't go viral, but it's the one that lasts. So how do we start building this into our lives? Well, the important thing to understand is that the patterns that keep asserting themselves in your life aren't patterns in your thoughts. They're in your body. They're in your nervous system, in your field. They're assumptions and expectations that were encoded before you could consciously choose to accept them or reject them. And an awareness of the patterns themselves, even a very sophisticated level of awareness, doesn't reach the level where the pattern actually lives. That's why you can understand something completely and still be run by it. The insight is real, it's just aimed at the wrong level. What changes things is working underneath the insight, at the places in the body that have been quietly holding a particular charge for a long time. The bracing, the hypervigilance, the reaching, the quiet defending. When that starts to loosen, the cognitive patterns don't need to be argued with anymore. They just stop having a charge running through them. And when that happens, when the body stops generating the signal that was keeping the pattern alive, what you attract in your life changes naturally. Not because you redirected your desire, because you're no longer pulling from the same distorted ground as before. That path is slower than visualization. It asks more. It asks you to face things that feel worse before they feel better. But what it builds doesn't collapse under the weight of what arrives. So here's where I'll leave you. If desire-based manifestation has worked for you and it's holding, awesome. Keep it up. Use what works. But if you've been through a cycle, attracted things and watched them erode, felt the fear underneath the wind, done the years of real work, and you're still waiting for the external to catch up, your path isn't slower. It's just deeper. And what it's building is different in kind. The goal was never to attract what you want. It was always to become someone whose life naturally reflects who you actually are. To attract from what you are, not from what you lack. Everything else is just a distraction. So if what I described resonates, if this felt more like a recognition than new information, I put together a guide called The Architecture of Change. It maps out the structural framework I just walked through in a way that you could sit with and apply directly to your life. It's $17. The link is in the description below. And if you'd rather start with something to read, I wrote a short guide called The Question Beneath the Question. Totally free, just a short letter, the kind of thing that I wish someone had given me When I was in the middle of all this and I couldn't name it, to put words to my experience, that link is in the description as well. 2 different starting points, depending on what feels right for you. If you want to go deeper into some of the concepts that I talked about, check out the video linked up above. I'll see you in the next one.